Hello, everyone, and welcome. I am Harsh, your host for today's session, and we are very excited to have with us Karishma Bansal, founder of NAPREP. And I think she needs no introduction. Most of us would be familiar with her based on her contributions on GMAT Club, Reddit. She has been pretty active with GMAT Club strategies, GMAT strategies, and she has been helping a lot of students. So today, she's going to walk us through one of the most common challenges which test takers face often. It's the time management in DI. Uh, I myself found in the mix of it a couple of times while I was preparing, and I think today she's gonna help us demystify what's kind of the challenges which we currently face. And yeah, definitely this is kind of a Q&A session, so definitely feel free to drop your questions in the test in the chat, whether it's about timing strategy or any specific DI pain points. We are happy to take them up, and let's make this session interactive and engaging. With that, I will hand it over to you, Karishma. Over to you.
Hi Harsh, hi everyone. It's good to be here and trying to address a big pain point currently that most GMAT learners have, which is time management and data insights. Look, I'm not going to guys try to trivialize your pain. I totally get it that it's not easy. Yeah, definitely it is a pain point for most GMAT test takers. But I would tell you to keep two things in mind before we start. Our discussion before we start with basic strategies is that I want you to keep two things in mind. What are they? One, it is all right. Yeah, it is hard, but there are a lot of things that you can do. Lot of little things. They're going to add marginal value. Totally, I understand, but you can improve a whole lot from where you are currently. Yeah, that is one. So basically what I'm trying to say is we can do something about it. Don't think that data insights time management is there's nothing we can do. No, nothing like that. Yeah. Secondly, very importantly, everyone is facing that time management issue, right? Everyone has a problem. Everyone it is putting perhaps too much time in MSR, perhaps getting lost in a graph, etc. So essentially it is a level playing field. If you feel that the time is less for you, it is less for everyone else as well, and all you have to do is percentile has to be great, right? It's not that in absolute terms you have to get a very good score. Your performance matters percentile wise, which means that you are all at par. If it is hard for you, it is hard for everybody. Yeah. So with that mindset, start, and it'll be much easier. Yeah. There are a lot of things that we can do about it, and that everyone is facing this problem. Is that okay? Yeah, Harsh, makes sense. All
Super
right.
helpful.
Great. All right. So, guys, let's start. I'll share my screen with you. We'll share a few points. The way I have structured this, today's session is one, we are going to talk about the very basics which you should know before you start practicing data insights seriously. Yeah. I would suggest you to be very comfortable with those before you start taking those practice sets, etc. Why? Because you are losing a lot of opportunity in case you're not good with these. Yeah, you should be very comfortable with these basic points, and then when you're practicing you learn how to apply these basic points in data insights questions, which is a skill of its own. Yeah, which does need effort, which does need practice. So first we're going to go through a list of these basic points that you need to be very good at. Second, we are going to talk about strategies, the various strategies that can help you save time. As I said, they are each is going to add a marginal value, a small bit of value. Yeah, but when you take them all together, then you'll end up saving a lot of time. Yeah, and then we'll just wrap that up with some key takeaways. Thereafter, we are going to take a few questions of graphs and of TPAs, where I'm going to talk about how these strategies should be used in these questions. So our focus is not going to be on solving the question, but it is going to be on time management in these questions. Yeah, how am I evaluating? What am I focusing on? That is the main point. Yeah, so then we're going to take a look at those questions, and then we're going to have the Q&A. So it's going to be open to everybody. You can ask your questions, whatever you may have on any kind of data insights. Yeah, questions. All right, so give me a moment. Let me share my screen with you. All right, so here is my first slide. Yeah. All right. So I hope it is visible to everyone. These are the basic points, the things that you must be extremely comfortable with, the conceptual things that you must be very, very comfortable with before you start working on your data insights seriously. Yeah. So let's say percentages. First thing, percentages, you have to be very comfortable with fraction to percent equivalent. Don't say, you know what, I'll calculate it. It barely takes 5 seconds. Hey, you are adding up those 5 seconds and it is adding up to 5 minutes in the test, guys. Yeah, because percentages is something that appears like in almost every question, almost every second question at least, right? You should be very comfortable with successive percentage changes. These things do get tested a whole lot. For that matter, you should also be very comfortable with ratios, with variations. So all those basic things that are essential for quant, they are essential for data insights as well. And you have to be good at them before you start practicing data insights, because knowing how to handle these topics in data insights is going to be a skill of its own, which you will realize once you start practicing it. Yeah, it will not happen overnight. So it's not going to happen that I'm great at percentages and tomorrow I'm going to get great at data insights. That is not going to happen. Yeah. Then second thing, comparing fractions, extremely important. There are lots of little strategies using which you can compare fractions. One is not sufficient. Don't say, okay, I know how to compare fractions by making denominator the same. That is not it. I should have at least 5 in my hand at any time. Whenever a fraction is given to me, 2 fractions are given to me, I should, something or the other will strike. Okay, here, this increases by this much percent. The numerator is increased by this much percent. The denominator is increased by this much percent, or whatever. Or let's say one is added to the numerator, one is added to the denominator. So when is this fraction going to be greater or smaller? What those things, they should become second nature to me. Yeah, comparing fractions is extremely important again in data insights. Yeah, weighted averages. Now, of course, no session of mine can be complete without talking about weighted averages. We end up using it everywhere. So I'm going to use weighted averages in, some of my learners will ask me, okay, just tell me the topics in which we can use the weighted averages. And I'll tell them that pretty much like almost every topic in critical reasoning in quant kind of questions, you'll be using weighted averages. Then data insights, a lot of times weighted averages is going to help me figure out very quickly what the answer is. Like, for example, total revenue is given to me, number of tickets sold is given to me. I will find out, okay, so revenue per ticket. And then if I have 2 separate ticket prices, I have automatically got the mean over there. Yeah, helps you in a lot of cases. Again, you have to be very comfortable with it. Then deviation from mean, that is another thing which helps a lot. We know that mean average is arithmetic mean, that is tested in a lot of questions. Yeah, then deviation from mean, where you say, okay, the deficit in these numbers is this much and here I can see the excess is this much, just a rough estimate. That skill is very important. So your mean, you will not calculate just by adding all the numbers and dividing by n. That is not going to help you in data insights. Knowing that deficit is equal to excess and how to calculate that, how to get that, very important. Then number properties, lots of number properties here. GCF, LCM are extremely important. Then also things like, when you add 1 to the numerator and denominator, again a part of comparing fractions as well. Those kind of little things will add a lot of value to how quick you can get your answer in data insights as well. Yeah, again, one thing that we know is going to help us in quant as well as in data insights, estimation, approximation. The answers usually are not very close together, which means estimation works. I have to be very good at estimation, at rounding numbers. Then I also have to be very good at strategizing estimation properly. It's not just about knowing how to round numbers. Yeah. So for example, in case I'm rounding my numerator up, I'm not going to round my denominator down. Why? Because I'm introducing a lot of error when I do that, isn't it? Yeah? So knowing how to do the estimation correctly is also a skill in which you should be very, very comfortable with. Then negation and conditional operators. So I keep talking about conditional statements, how important they are, etc. Well, their importance has increased a whole lot in data insights. Yeah, I should know exactly how to negate a statement. I should know how to use conditional operators, how to make those Venn diagrams. When I have if A then B, then A has to be inside B, etc. All those kind of things, right? So again, extremely important. Then your topics such as trends, correlation, slope of line, there is graphing. I don't need to get into a lot of detail in these topics, but I should have a good overall idea of these topics as well. Yeah. Now all these little concepts, they form the basics of my time management. They're not just basics of data insights, guys. They are basics of time management in data insights. Yeah, there, for you to be able to save time to, okay, to complete the section, hopefully complete the section, you will need to be very comfortable with these little things. Yeah. Okay. These were the basics. Next, we'll come to strategy. So essentially, I'll run through the strategies as well, and then I'll show you how to use them in questions. Yeah. Once we go through these strategies, then you can ask me your doubts. In case you have any questions on these or anything else later on in the Q&A. Okay. So I'm sure you guys have heard that slow is smooth and smooth is fast. Well, that is exactly true for your data insights section. Keep that in mind. If you try to hurry, if you are anxious, oh, you know what, less time, I have to complete it very quickly, you'll end up wasting more time. Second, your answer will not be correct. Yeah. If you are committing to a question, please commit to the question. In case you feel you don't have time, fine, then and the question looks like kind of complicated, just guess on it, bank the time, use it on another question. Yeah. But if you are saying you are going to solve this question, you have to do it. You have to invest yourself in the question. Yeah. Just trying to get the big picture and getting the answer, that will not work in data insights. Yeah. Okay. Then I like to think of data insights as an open book exam. So you know basically the data is given to you, the answer is there given to you, but there is time pressure. Obviously time pressure has to be there, right? Otherwise, I mean, it's not an exam. So, what are the things that we have to focus on? One, we have to learn to read the book. What I mean by that is, let's say I'm given a graph. I have to learn how to read the graph, right? The graph is my book. It has all the information. It has all the data in it, right? So I have to learn how to read the book, which means that the description given along with the graph, the description given along with the table is extremely important. So some of my learners would say, I want to save time, so I'll not really read the description. I'll just go onto the graph and try to understand the graph and quickly go on to the question. That's not going to work. Often some important information is there, plus the description tells you exactly what the graph represents. It helps me save a lot of time in case I first go through the description. Yeah, I actually save time by reading it. So that is why it is not a good strategy to skip that. So as I said, it's an open book. First learn to read the book and then focus on what you are asked. What exactly is the question talking about? Yeah, what do they want you to find out in the book? Yeah. Once you know that, which means that you have to read the question stem very properly as well. So once this is done, now you go to the relevant part of the graph and get your answer, relevant part of the table. So basically the relevant part of the book that is given to you, you go and get the answer over there. Don't try to read the whole book. What I mean by that is, don't try to go through every value of the graph, right? I'm not going to try and go through the every data point in the table. All I'm going to do is, one, learn how to read the book, which means I'm going to see how the explanation given along with the graph. Second, I have to read the question stem very properly, and then I'm going to go to that section of whatever is given to me and try and get my answer. Yeah. So keep that in mind. Then third, and guys, stay with me. Yeah? Don't go on reading the whole list and just stay with me over here. Third point, read the question stem fully. So yeah, we've kind of covered it with the second one. Yeah, spend more time on it. Make sure that you understand exactly what is given. One thing, sometimes they'll give you an example. They'll say, okay, for example, in 2006, this was this much and this was this much types, right? That data is given to explain the graph to you. Do not skip it. It is very useful. In fact, I'm really glad when I read that, because the moment I read that, the whole graph becomes very clear to me. Yeah, and I'll show you an illustration of the same as well. But don't try to skip that. You're not saving time by skipping it. You're actually wasting time, because then you're going to try and figure that out on your own from the graph. And why would you, when you have been given what exactly it represents, right? I'll show you an illustration. Don't worry if this is not clear. Okay, the next point. While reading the question stem, refer to the graph or table diagram or whatever diagram is given to you. So don't read the question stem in isolation, the explanation in isolation. Yeah. Let's say I have been given the graph represents this. So I'm going to go to the graph and see, okay, where is it? X-axis, Y-axis. Then how this varies with that. So I'm going to say, okay, so, this varies with that, right? So check back with the diagram, with the table, with whatever is given to you when you are reading the explanation. The entire, you can, it becomes very clear in your head the moment you do that. Yeah, everything written over there, everything given to you makes a lot of sense in that case. Okay. Then most important information is found at the edges. What I mean by that is that your column headings are going to be the most important. Then the data given on the axis, the title of the axis, the scale, the units, all those things are important. Every point, what data it represents doesn't really matter. As I said, I don't want to read the whole book. I'm only going to look at those points which are actually relevant to me, right? But one thing that we should take a look at is what the trend is like. Yeah, for example, if it is a graph, then what is the trend like? If it is a table, what is the trend like? We in MSRs also you will find graphs and you'll find some tables, and also just take a look at the trend, the overall view of the diagram given to you. Yeah. Then another important point, use the available tools. And we tend to forget that sometimes. The tools are in table questions sorting. Yeah. How sometimes my learners will tell me, you know what, I just forgot to use the sorting feature. That doesn't work, guys. And that is the reason why I say that you have to keep these points in mind before you start your serious data insights practice, because only if while practicing you are sorting the table, then you will remember to do it in the exam as well. For tables, sorting is extremely relevant, extremely useful. The first thing I do when I'm looking for my answer, when I've read the question, is all right, with which field should I sort it? The moment you are thinking on those terms, you do get your answer very quickly. Especially if it is a big table, then you know that sorting is required for sure. Yeah. Don't forget the on-screen calculator. Again, something that people forget sometimes. And again, a reason why you have to ensure that you integrate this practice while practicing data insights questions as well. Look, typically we say that, okay, you don't really need to use a calculator much, and I'm certainly of the same opinion. And of course, estimation helps you and you don't have to do actual calculations. All that is great. Yeah. But when you have certain, big divisions, for example, maybe you need to find the EPS for a few companies. So you'll have the earnings and you'll have the share number of shares, for example. Then instead of wasting your time doing the, trying to figure out with those big numbers, that division, you can key it into the calculator and get, and sometimes your options are going to be kind of close as well. So don't forget, there is a calculator. There are certain questions where I have realized that calculator becomes kind of necessary. Yeah. So at that time, in case you forget that it is there, it's not going to work out very well. Yeah. Do include it in your regular practice. All right, then try to reduce your universe of possible values. Again, one way in which we save time. So for example, if in TPA, yeah, you can reduce your universe of possible values. So for example, you need to find value of A and B, yeah, and you are given that A is less than B, and you have these 5, 6, figures, numbers given to you. So I know for a fact that A will be the smaller one and B will be the larger one, the greater one, yeah. So already my universe of possible values has reduced. Now, for example, there is even a relation given to me. Let's say B is 3 times A. Then I barely have like 2 or 3 pairs that are available to me where your B is 3 times A. So you're just focusing on those. So that in that way, even before you evaluate and if you figure out what is possible, what is not, take a look at your options. Reduce that universe of possible options. Yeah. Same thing for graphs. Of course, we have to click on the drop down menu the moment I go to the question stem, because it is possible that, let's say, there are 10, 15 data points. Yeah, but the drop down has only 3. So I just need to focus on those 3 data points. I don't have to worry about, let's say, the company with the smallest revenue last year or whatever. So then the drop down, if there are like 15 companies or 10 companies on the graph and the drop down is only 3, I only have to look at those 3 and compare them, right? I don't have to find the smallest out. I have to find the smallest out of those 3. Those 3 are the only possible options. I can pretty much ignore everyone else, right? So in that way, just ensure that You're reducing your universe of possible values before you're even trying to get your answer. Yeah. Then remember one thing very important: questions of data insights are designed to be solved within 2 or 3 minutes. They are not meant to be solved in 4 or 5 minutes at all. Yeah, they have given them as experimental questions to other test takers. They know that these questions can be solved within 2 to 3 minutes, which means that you can also solve them. So if you find yourself, if you find that you have to do like these 10 calculations to get the value, let's say, of the highest revenue, etc., you know that you've missed something. Maybe the question stem only asks whether you can determine which company had the highest revenue, maybe, right? So, and know that the question is meant to be done in 2 minutes. And in case you feel that, oh my, there's going to be like so many calculations I have to go through, that means that there is something that you've missed there. Yeah, keep that in mind. One very important thing: flag the time traps. Time traps are typically going to be your TPA questions. Graph questions, even if the graph is a little complicated, if you read the explanation given along with the graph, it will usually make a whole lot of sense. Yeah. Uh, okay, in case you feel that, yeah, something is extremely complicated, running short on time, no worries, guess it, come back to it later on. But there are certain TPA questions, and I'm going to illustrate a couple of them to you. And if you get those kind of TPA questions, you should not keep them for the first round. Yeah, they are recursive kind of questions. They are a time trap. They may not be very hard to solve per se, but they will take a lot of time to solve, and that is time that you don't have, at least not in the first run. If you have extra time at the end, maybe you can come back to it. That is fine, and I'll talk about exactly which TPA questions these are. Yeah. Okay. Now there is, one question type which learners are extremely unhappy with these days, and that is data sufficiency. They feel that the questions are really tricky, but the data sufficiency questions these days are conceptual. Yeah, they are not calculation based. So in case you're saying that, okay, there were these four variables and some, mark price and selling price and this and that, like I got like totally lost. They are meant to be that way because they're testing your concept. Do you really understand which price is obtained? How do you understand, if let's say cost price is greater than selling price, then what has happened to the profit or what has happened to the margin, etc. Yeah. DS questions these days are conceptual. Yeah, which means that plugging in values and trying to get the answer is either going to take too long, or you may not even get the accurate answer. So you have to think about them more conceptually. Yeah. um, One last thing in strategy, in time management, and one of the very, very important things, and usually why, if people don't follow this, then the section, no matter how well you prepare for it, it goes for a toss, that they just don't know when to let go a question. Yeah. So we say when the going gets tough, the smart let go. Know that I've invested 2 3 minutes in this question. Know that, okay, it doesn't look like I'll get my answer in the next 5 10 seconds. It's not like it's right there types, right? Know when to let go a question. Look, it's even if you win the battle with this question, even if you solve this question, you will still lose the war. If you end up investing like 5 minutes on a question, you're probably missing out on the easier questions you might get later on. And that is something which we know we cannot afford. Right? After all, it is about managing your time appropriately. My aim in GMAT is to get every easy and medium question absolutely right, and then try and get as many hard questions as I can, isn't it? But my first aim is to ensure that I get every easy and medium question right, which means that I have to have, enough time for all the leftover questions. Yeah. So don't try to win that battle. You have to win the entire war, right? Okay. So these were some of the basic strategies of time management in data insights. Yeah, the key takeaways we can take a look at after we go through the questions. So Harsh, should we go on to the questions on GMAT Club?
Yep, we can.
Yeah, all right. Just give me a moment. All right, here we go. All right, guys, I hope you're all able to see this. Yeah. Here are, I have, these are some of the questions on GMAT Club. We're just going to discuss certain basics that we have just talked about right now, the strategies and how to use them. These were some of the questions that learners found difficult. So that is why I've shortlisted them. And let's solve the first question completely. After that, we'll just focus on the strategies. And that is because my solution is not there on the first question. For all the other questions, my solution is already there on GMAT Club. So you can take a look at that, later on. But for now, we'll talk about how to save time. Yeah, how to ensure that we're not using too much time in the questions. Yeah, how to strategize it. Is that okay? Yeah. All right, just a moment. So I have mine. Yeah. So let's say I have this kind of a question. This question appears on my screen. First thing that I'm going to do, and guys, realize my focus, what I want to do over here is save time. Yeah. So I am not going to spend time on the graph. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start reading what is given to me. The graph shows the maximum absolute humidity. All right. While reading what is given to me, I'm going to go to the graph and check, okay, where is absolute humidity? Shows the maximum. Where is it? So I have absolute humidity over here. What is it? The maximum amount of water vapor that atmospheric air at sea level can hold. So they have told me what maximum absolute humidity is. It's the maximum amount of water vapor that air at sea level can hold in grams of water vapor per cubic meter. So this is the units. The units are given to me gram per meter cube. Yeah. So how many grams, that is what weight of water vapor essentially is there in 1 meter cube. All right. For integer value temperatures on the Celsius scale. So integer value temperature. So I'm looking at this temperatures. Yeah. So I have the integer values 1357 and I'm looking at the points over here, the data points as well. So I have 1 here, I have, 2 here, the point for 2 over here, then the point for 3, point for 4. So essentially I know that these are going to be now 41 points. Yeah, because it is still 41. Okay, when the air contains this maximum amount of water vapor, the air is said to be at its saturation point. So what I get from that now, when you read a statement, ensure that you understand what it says. So what I understand what it is saying is that at 1 degree Celsius, in case the air has 5 grams of water vapor per meter cube, then the air is at saturation point. Fine. Then in addition, at sea level and at temperature of T degrees, the density of air containing no water vapor, and there is this one particular formula given to me. I'll come to it when I need it. I just know that this is the weight of air when there is no water vapor in it. Yeah, so that is given to me how to find it at T degrees Celsius. Fine. It is given to me in kgs per meter cube. This is given to me in grams per meter cube. So I'll just multiply this by 10 upon to the power 3 and I'll get it in grams per meter cube. So I don't have to worry about the units either. It's pretty simple, right? Nothing complicated there. Fine. From each drop down, select the correct option. Fine. Now at 37 degrees Celsius, so I'm looking at 37 over here. And at sea level, the weight of water vapor in 1 meter cube of air at its saturation point is, so 37, I need the weight of water vapor. I know I'll get it in grams. I'm given weight of water vapor in 1 meter cube. So all I have to do is read this particular value. Yeah. But guys, this is a desktop in front of me, right? There's a screen in front of me. So how do I get exactly which point it is? This is where knowing what the graph is telling me is very important, because I know that each point represents one integer temperature. Yeah, so if this is 41, this is my 40, this is my 39, this is my 38, and this is my 37. So this is what I have to read, 37, which is about 42. This I can read, right? I know this point, then I know this is 42. So basically, the weight of water vapor at 37 degrees is going to be 42. So I can, write 42 over here. is dash percent. So I'm going to look at the options that I have: 3, 3.6, 4, or 4.2%. Now the values over here are not very far apart. Yeah. In case this were like 3%, 15%, 40%, that would be fairly comfortable, of course. But here the values are like 3%, 3.6%, 4%, 4.2%. So they're kind of close. So maybe, I might need to use the calculator. Okay, percent of the weight of 1 meter cube of air containing no water vapor. So I have my formula. I'll need to use it. T is 37. I'm talking about at 37 degrees. So if I add 37 to 273, what do I get? I get a 300. So all they're asking me is that at this sea level, at 37, what is the weight of water vapor as a percent of the weight of the air? So weight of water vapor I know is 42. As a percent of the weight of air, that is going to be 10 to the power 5 into 10 to the power 3 upon this entire thing, which is 287 into 300. So this will come up, right? It will become 287 into 300. Yeah. What do I do here? I just take my calculator. I get 42 into 287 into 3, and I get my answer. I can ignore all the zeros that are there at the top, all the zeros that are there at the bottom. I'll get my answer as something 3, 6, blah 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 blah, and I know that that is one of the options, 3.6%. Right? So this is an advantage of having the options which are really close. I know then my answer is going to be 3.6% over here. Yeah. Look, now this option did take some time. It did take some calculation. Yeah. Then my second statement is very, very simple then. The average rate of change of maximum absolute humidity from 31 to 41. So I'm looking at 31 to 41. How has it changed? I don't have to worry too much, but I'll just get an approximate. So from 30, it has gone up to 50. So, okay. The average rate of change of maximum absolute humidity from 11 to 21, if I'm going to look at 11 to 21, the change is very little. This is a much flatter graph over here. The slope of the line is much less. Here, the slope of the line is much more. So, of course, the change over here is a lot more. Right? So I just select my greater than over here and my question is done. Remember, it is one of the harder questions for sure, one of the hardest questions. Yeah. If one of the options, one of the statements is taking time, the other one will not take time. Sometimes, you'll feel that, okay, once like I'm not even done and I have to spend so much time doing it. The question is designed to be solved within 2 to 3 minutes. Do you understand that? Yeah. So believe in that when you are doing your practice also. Yeah. Okay. Now for the rest of the questions, we'll just go through. We'll talk about how to go through the question stem and basically how to deal with it. We'll not solve the whole question because we don't have that much time. In fact, we've used up half an hour. Okay. Look at this one. As of the beginning of June, this is a graph that it's an area graph, not something that I see very regularly. Like I'm very comfortable with bar graph and line graph, right? Those are fine. We see like very regularly, but this is an area graph. Okay, so I'm not even sure how I'm going to read it. Will I waste my time on trying to figure out what? No, I'm just going to go to the explanation. As of the beginning of June 2012, okay, 612, I see 612 is here. Device D was available in exactly 5 versions. So I have the 5 versions here. Okay. Version 1 became available at the beginning of June 06. So I have 606 over here, and this says version 1 becomes available, and I can see this is version 1. Okay, so it's kind of, it's all matching up, it's all making sense. And a new version became available at the beginning of each subsequent June. So next June, that is 607, this version 2 became available. Then 608, this version 3 became available, right? I'm looking at the key over here. Then 609, version 4. Perfect. Works out. Yeah. Then the graph shows the number of units of device D in use by version at the beginning of each June from 2006 to 2012. So basically, it's showing us how many units are in use. For example, now, as I said, when they give you a for example, do not skip it. Don't say this is going to waste your time. This is what is going to help you save time. It's very important because it's going to give you a very clear picture of the graph within a few seconds. Yeah. For example, at the beginning of June 2008, so I have 608, they're talking about this point. At the beginning of, there were approximately 10,000 units of device D in use. So 608, they're saying 10,000. Well, makes sense. Both together, cumulative is 10,000. Approximately 5,000 of which were version 1 and approximately 5 were version 2. So now I see, half of them are version 1, half of them are version 2. Now I know how to read the graph, isn't it? So basically, I can say that 609, these 30,000 total devices were in use. Yeah, I can see that about, 13,000 were version 3. Then I can see that about, I don't have to do all this, right? I'm just talking about how I know what the graph represents completely the moment I read the for example. Do not skip this. The question. So basically now I have understood the graph and now I can solve the question. The question is slightly tricky. It has another trap. Doesn't matter. You can check out the solution later. This is what we are going to do in this kind of a question. Okay, flowchart. Now that is something which usually people find a little difficult. I'm not sure why. When it's a huge flowchart, or this is a smaller flowchart, so still okay, maybe I can invest some time in figuring out what it is saying. But when I do that, essentially I'm trying to read the whole book even before I know what is the question that they have asked, right? What will I do? I will go straight to the explanation. A certain city's bus system includes several stops within a university campus. The city has devised a new plan to decrease the amount of time bus drivers devote to receiving payments at the busy university stops. Okay, another new plan outlined is a diagram. Passengers would pay upon entry, pay upon exit, or ride free. So I have pay on entry, pay on exit, or ride free depending on the time of the day. So depending on what? On the time of the day. So here I see a boarded between 6 a.m. and 6 p.m. Then on their boarding and departure locations, and on whether they present a valid university ID. So I see there is a decision box for ID. There's a decision box for where they boarded, where they exited. So fine. Perfect. Do I need to worry about every yes and every no at this point? No. I know what the graph or the flowchart shows me. I am going to go directly to my questions now. Yeah. All right. In fact, when the flowcharts are quite elaborate, you may not even need to look at like one section of it at all. Ensure that you understand what the flowchart is giving you and then directly jump to your question, and based on that, figure out what section you have to focus on. The solution is of course provided over here. All right, another graph. There is, one line graph, and then there are two other lines above it and below it. Again, something that people find a little harder to understand. What are we going to do? Directly jump onto the explanation. So based on a study of a 10,000 person sample of the adult population, the unbroken curve. So I go and see, where is the unbroken curve? This is the unbroken curve, okay? On the graph, plots an association between daily consumption of various amounts of beverage Z. So, okay, so they're saying that the graph talks about, daily consumption of beverage Z. I see 100 ml glasses of beverage Z consumed per day, and I see 1, 2, 3. So essentially it is saying 1 glass, 100 ml glass consumed, 2 glasses consumed, 3. Okay, so this is my data. Shows an association between this and the relative risk of contracting disease X. So, and here is my relative risk of contracting some disease. Okay. Compared to the risk with no consumption of beverage Z indicated by 1. So I have 1 over here. Here there is, this is the relative risk of this is the risk of contracting. This one shows me risk of contracting the disease when there is no consumption of beverage Z. When I start consuming a few glasses, 1 glass, 2 glass, 3 glasses, what happens? This relative risk has reduced. I can see that. Yeah. After a point, the risk starts increasing again. Okay. I've understood the graph. What are these two other lines? Now, here, for the entire adult population of country, why the relative risk values could, because of sampling error, be either higher or lower than the particular 10,000 sample. So, excuse me, we know that when there is a survey or a study, and we're doing it on a sample of the population, right? There could be a sampling error. There usually is a sampling error. So they're just telling us that these represent that the true value, the actual value could lie within these values. Yeah. This is just my estimation based on the sample, right? Okay, now thus the two broken lines show the estimates of how high or how low those relative risk values for the population could be. That's it, right? Do I understand the graph completely? Try to solve the question. It becomes extremely simple the moment you understand the data that is given by the graph. Yeah. Okay, so these were some of the graph questions that we wanted to discuss. How to read the graph appropriately, how to understand the graph appropriately, even if it is a graph that you've not seen before, even if it is something that you're uncomfortable with, it just doesn't matter. It is their job to explain to you what exactly the graph gives, yeah, the kind of data the graph gives. Okay, great. Let's take a look at a few TPA questions as well now. Again, lots of little things that you can do in TPA to ensure that your time taken is not too much. So let's look at this one. An inventory of a neighborhood's trees found that 32% were conifers and most of the rest were deciduous. Among the conifers were 258 spruces. So the moment I see this, all right, so essentially the number of trees split into what conifers, then deciduous, and then some others also, right? Then among the conifers, there are spruces and pines and then cedars. What am I going to do over here? Simple. I'm going to try and make a diagram over here. So I'll say, all right, so T is my total number of trees. Guys, in TPA, if a diagram is not given to you, it could be useful for you to see the entire picture by making a small diagram. Yeah? All right. So then I'll say T. I'll say here are your conifers. I'll say this is 32%. Then most of the others are deciduous, but these are the others. So I'll say this is somewhat less than 68%. And there are going to be a few over here. Yeah. Just a moment. Is there a problem?
No,
We're good, right? Harsh, no
yeah,
issues?
we are good.
I just thought there was a little bit of disturbance. I thought maybe I'm missing something. All right. So then, and then, see, then start drawing the tree diagram. Ensure that the whole thing is clear to you. Yeah. In TPA, we must understand exactly what is given to us before we can solve. Yeah. We cannot skip any of the data that is given to us. Yeah. But your diagrams, small diagrams, they help. All right. Again, supposedly a difficult question. What are you going to do over here? So why have I taken this? In a study conducted over several years, seabird and domesticated cat. So they're talking about seabird and cat population in on a geographically isolated island changed from year to year. Researchers found that over the course of the study, the relationship R between birds and cats was such that the island's seabird population was 3 times as likely to decrease from the previous year if the island's cat population increased. So what am I going to do over here? Once again, for it to make sense to me, I'm going to say, okay, so they have given me a condition over here, right? If the cat population increased, even if slightly, so basically if the cat population went up, yeah, what happens? I'm given that the seabird population was 3 times as likely to decrease from the previous year. So it's an if statement. It is going to be a subset. So my bird population is 3 times as likely to decrease. Yeah, if cat population increases even a little bit, maybe cats are predators for these birds, whatever the reason. But this is what is given to me, and I'm going to put it in the diagram like this. Yeah. The researchers were about to begin a second follow-up study with the same duration. So again, I have a first study of conducted over several years, let's say 50 years. Now they are coming up with a second study, again of 50 years given to me. Yeah, based on the recent trends, the researchers made the following projections. R will hold, so this is fine. So this relation holds for my second study, they're saying. And the R will hold and the island's cat population will decrease during more years of the second study than it did in their first study. So what they're telling me is that here the cat population will decrease for more years. This is going to happen for more years in the second study. So here, like for example, for 10 years the cat population decreased. Here for more than 10 years cat population is going to decrease. Yeah, which means that for fewer years my cat population is going to increase. Yeah, so this is going to happen for fewer years, which means this is going to also happen for fewer years, because whenever this happens, right? If there are fewer elements over here, then automatically I have fewer elements over here as well, right? In this entire graph, in this entire circle there, right? Now I have all the data given to me. Now I can take a look at my statements and get my answer. Again, the solution has been provided, so I don't think you will have any problems with it. Yeah, just go through that. Okay, now let me come to the two TPA questions. We'll discuss two TPA questions where I said that you need to flag the time traps. Yeah, when you look at these TPA questions, you need to take a call within 15-20 seconds that you're going to skip them. They are not appropriate to be, I'm generalizing, obviously. For some people, and for a small percentage, timing is not a problem in data insights. Yeah, because for whatever reasons, maybe they're really that good at it, they've been dealing with data, whatever. For them, of course, they shouldn't skip any question if they don't have to. But in case time management is a problem, if typically you struggle with it, then what do you do when you get a question like this? And what do I mean by a question like this? I mean, where, let's say, the options are all statements. Yeah, then look at the question stem, and you might want to do it for TPA questions. In case timing is a problem for you in data insights, you might want to do it for all TPA questions. Take a look at the options. Okay, so I have statements. If there are these small numbers, fine, go ahead, solve the question. If you have long statements in the options, and if select for one and for two different events, such that the guidelines most clearly indicate that if the event selected for one occurs, then the event selected for two either will occur or has already occurred. When you have in the question stem something that expects you to pick up values for A and B, and the relation is if A happens then B happens, or if A, something where you have to go recursive. What this means is that, if I have to find the answer once I've read the explanation, what am I going to do? I'll say, okay, if my first option is correct, then out of the four options I look, do I have something which should hold true? Yeah, if I don't find anything, then I'll say, okay, then let me go to my second option. If that is A, if this is true, then I'm going to take a look at the four leftover options once again. Okay, does any one of those need to be true as well, or would have occurred, or whatever? You understand? Then if I don't get it, then I'll go to my statement 3. I'll say, okay, if this is A, yeah, then can I have a B from the other four options? You understand? I'm going, recursive. I'm going, first A is my state option 1, and B can I have from option 2 to 5. Then, okay, what if A is option 2? Then can I have B as option 1 or 3, 4, or 5? You understand? I'll have to go through it again and again. In the worst case, I'll find that my A is option 5 and my B is option 4, right? That is the worst case, when I have gone through everything again and again. So even if it's not very hard, do you understand that I will end up taking a lot of time? Even if there are statements, so I'll have to go through the statements again and again. Yeah, so these are the kind of questions where, if you get them and if timing is a problem in data insights, you should just mark them immediately. Yeah, bank that time, don't waste your time. Just see, okay, statement C, okay, this is what the question is asking, it is a recursive one, let me just move on, I'll come back to it at the end. Bookmarking it is not going to be enough. Ensure that you scribble somewhere on your scratch pad also that this is a question that you've not attempted. So if you have any time, you're going to come back to this question. Yeah, typically, look, questions like this are not going to be easy, because even if conceptually they are not hard, they are a time sink, right? So that is why it is best to leave them. If you end up leaving a hard question, it's not going to impact your score much. Yeah, if timing is a problem. Again, this is also very, very similar. Look at this. I have statements, long statements. I'll have to go through them again and again. Look at the question stem. Assuming that the information is true, select to statement 1 and statement 2. The statement says that if statement 1 is true, then statement 2 must be true. But it could be the case that 2 is true. So essentially, I'll have to say, okay, if my option 1 is true, does any of the others need to be true? No, fine. If my second is true, do I? It's, it just doesn't work where you say you can evaluate like each statement for A as well as for B simultaneously. That will just not work. The logic itself is a little complicated. Unless you're one of those geniuses, of course, then everything works. Yeah, then I'm sure you're not even in the session because you don't need it and your timing is already great, right? Do you understand? So these are the kind of questions where you say, all right, let me just leave them. Yeah, let me just not worry about these questions for the time being. If I have time left over, then I'm going to come back to them. These questions are typically going to be hard. So then penalty that you will face, even if you don't attempt it, is not going to be high. Yeah, but these kind of questions, they are a red flag. They are a huge time sink. Yeah. All right. So let's just come back to our key takeaways once. So let's just take a look at this very quickly now. Build your basics. You remember the first slide where we talked about those percentages and all the other topics. You need to be very comfortable with those. Think of data insights as an open book exam. Yeah, you have to. There are two things you have to do. You have to learn how to read the book, which means you have to look at the explanation that is given to you, and you have to focus on what is asked. So you have to read the question stem very carefully as well. Then get a gist of the data and come to it when required. So just look at the trend, for example. Yeah, just view it from a distance very objectively. Okay, this is what it talks about. I know the axis, I know the column headings, etc. I know what they're talking about, but I'll come to it based on what is asked in the question. Then once you have done a little bit of basics of data insights, once you're comfortable with all these topics and etc., practice in timed clusters only. Yeah. It for initial, of course, a few times, you're going to do it untimed to try and understand exactly what an MSR does and what a graph does, etc. But after that, all your practice should be in a timed manner. So give yourself, let's say, 5 questions. Give yourself 10 to 12 minutes. Try and solve them in that. After that, once you have given it first shot in a timed manner, then give as much time as you need. Evaluate it at your speed. Do whatever you wish to. But first shot to every question should be in a timed manner. Then use diagrams and shorthand for efficiency. So I showed you how, and there are lots of different types of diagrams that you can use to ensure that the picture is clear to you of what exactly is given. And most importantly, know when to let go. Right? In case you feel that you're stuck, your internal clock should raise an alarm that okay, this is done. You need to now move on. Yeah. All right. So these were the inputs from my side. Just give me a moment. Where is my window? Yes. So these were a few of the inputs, the basics, the strategies, and the takeaway. Now, Harsh, let me know how to
We
proceed.
can take some questions. We have one question from Lavender Singh. He's saying that I think I even observed this like when I was practicing. We are stuck with a few question topics, like we are averaging 3 to 4 minutes even while
Mhm.
doing time. So what
Mhm.
do we do when we are preparing for the test in those scenarios?
Right. Right. So, Lavender, we've talked about how to handle graphs such that it doesn't take too much time, right? That you have to read the explanation, don't skip it, because that is going to help you save time. Yeah, you suddenly understand exactly what is given to you. And then typically the graph questions do not take too much time. Typically, there are very few calculations involved, and you're able to observe the answer very quickly. Yeah, try out these strategies, see in case you are able to shave off 1 minute. Look, I get it, but graph questions, if it is a very tricky, a very new kind of a graph, sometimes people do get stuck. They do end up taking a little more time. Absolutely, as I said, I will not trivialize your pain. I know that time management is a pain for sure, but there are certainly a lot of steps that we can take to ensure that we're not spending that much time. Again, if you're comfortable with comparing fractions, it helps a lot. If you're comfortable with percentages, with ratios, it helps a lot. Yeah, with weighted averages, you're able to see how to, I mean, a lot of things become very clear when those little little concepts are very, very clear. And when you start applying them to data insights questions as well, conditionals, for example, the moment you get a conditional, make that Venn diagram. It's so easy to see then you're not stuck, then you're not, confused in what is given and what is asked, right? So again, try out these small things, work on these. And in a graph, then typically one needs to spend about a couple of minutes once, one is sorted with all these things. One typically needs to spend about a couple of minutes. I give you TPA. I will not say that, once everything is sorted, once you're done with everything, then your TPA will come within 2 minutes. I will not say that. It is possible that TPA still, let's say, takes 3 minutes. Yeah. MSR will take 7 to 8 minutes typically. Yeah. So I totally get that. But then your graph, your tables, and your data sufficiency is where you need to bank your time. So ensure that you bring these down. Yeah. Yeah, so Harshada, exactly. That is, what I said, that data sufficiency is conceptual these days. Taking cases does take a lot of time, especially I've seen questions where, they give you a lot of variables and they're interconnected variables. If you try to plug in values, take cases and all, and you don't even know whether you've got the right answer, right? You don't even know whether you've taken care of every case or not, even after spending that much time. So focus on conceptual, how to solve data sufficiency questions conceptually. I'm sure there is you'll find enough videos where we talk about data sufficiency questions, GMAT focus data sufficiency questions, how to solve them conceptually. Yeah. Try for every data sufficiency question, think about this. I'm not going to plug in values to get my answer. In case I have to solve it conceptually, how am I going to do that? Try and do it during practice. Automatically then you'll know what to do in the actual exam, right? Okay, Abhishek, when comparison comes from table involving ratios, I generally take more time as options be very close. Any tips for? So Abhishek, when you're comparing, again, if it is ratios, if you're comparing fractions, ratios are essentially just fractions, right? As I said, that comparing fractions is a skill. There are quite a few strategies. You need to be comfortable with all those strategies. And then comparing fractions doesn't take time at all. Yeah, what you're missing is a little that conceptual part of it. Like, for example, how do I compare ratios or compare fractions? I'll not, one way is, of course, to make denominator the same or make numerator the same, and then you're able to compare it. But that could typically take a whole lot of time. What you instead can also do is, okay, in this fraction, numerator has, let's say, increased by 50%, but the denominator has not increased by 50%, by something, but it is not 50%, right? So then I know that this fraction is greater because the numerator has increased by a higher percentage, right? Then absolute values. I know how to compare fractions. Let's say if the numerator and the denominator, they've both increased by the same amount. So let's say I have a fraction which is between 0 and 1. In case I add 5 to the numerator as well as to the denominator, I get another fraction. This fraction is going to be closer to 1. I know that it is going to lie between my previous fraction and my 1. Yeah, again, number properties. Yeah, these little things. Once you learn them, once you understand them, then comparing fractions doesn't take time. That is the reason why I say that first start with these conceptual basics, because once they are great, you can learn how to apply them while practicing your data insights questions. So you starting your practice right, automatically you're not investing more time than you need to, and you're practicing how these concepts are applied to data insights questions as well. Yeah. Right. Unfortunately, my answer to this question has always been no. It'll still be a no. I just cannot, support that you skip an entire MSR passage. MSR has 3 questions attached to it. We have talked about how to save time in MSR questions in our video. I think the link is given there in the description. Check that out. What is it that you need to do that so that you don't spend more than, let's say, 6 to 8 minutes? As we said, that think of MSR also as an open book exam. Yeah, you have all the data given to you. Are you going to read the whole book? No. You're going to figure out how to read the book. You're going to figure out where the chapters are, what section discusses what, and you're going to move on, right? Then when you get a question, then you're going to go to that specific part and get your answer. So the strategy to solve an MSR question very quickly, the time management of MSR has been given in that video. Do check it out. It is not a good idea. I wouldn't suggest you to skip an entire MSR, 3 questions incorrect one after the other. I would much rather that, let's say you come across, in case you know that okay, you do fall short on time, what are you going to do? Let's say you come across a question which seems extremely hard. It is something that you've never seen before. You're really worried about it. Bank that time. Within 15 seconds, move on. It's fine. You know that you're going to fall short on time. You rather skip what is extremely hard. Yeah. A TPA question. We just talked about the kind of TPA question that you should skip. So you come across that, skip it. Yeah. If you know you're going to face time problems, ensure that you're ready for it from the beginning of as the section starts. I mean, it's not a good idea to, let's say, skip first two, 3 questions. But yeah, the point is that I'm prepared to skip the questions which I'm going to find too hard, and very quickly at that, so that I don't have to miss, let's say last 3, 4 questions. Again, 3, 4 errors in a row, not a good idea. What if those questions are simple? Not a good idea. If they are data sufficiency questions, you could have done them very quickly. Not a good idea to skip them, right? So then plan strategically, plan accordingly. Yeah. Okay. Nipun, verbal TPAs with conditionals are absolute time killers for me. And the worst part has been what you've also discussed with thanks. Great. Perfect. No, some things are better left. So verbal TPAs with conditionals. If you draw the Venn diagram for conditionals, I can assure you that the question will be solved in about 2 minutes or even less. Yeah, Nipun. So I suggest you to check out conditional videos which discuss how to make that Venn diagram. And then, in fact, I've also talked about how to make a Venn diagram in TPA questions when conditionals are involved. And the moment you get what you're supposed to do, definitely you will get your answer in 2 minutes. I would not suggest you to skip this question. Yeah, I totally agree. TPAs, some of the TPAs should be skipped, but maybe the ones which are with conditionals are not the ones to be skipped. Yeah, I do suggest you to check it out once. For questions where we have to go through a lot of data, how do we realize that the given data isn't enough to solve a question or statement? I don't answer because I think I messed up. Okay, A. So I am not sure what question type are you talking about. For questions, typically, let's say if you're talking about an MSR, for example, how do we realize that given data isn't enough to solve? So you know where, what each tab discusses. Yeah, you know what kind of data is available in each tab. Then you go to that particular tab, go to that particular area where you have the data for that. And in case you are sure that it is not over there, it's all right. You mark, you move on. Yeah. Spending too much time on it, going through all the data again and again, is not going to help you too much. It is important for us to take a lay of the land, so to say, to understand what exactly is given where to us. But once we have it, and that is the reason why I say it's very important for you to understand the structure of the data that is given to you. Once you've realized that this is the area where I should have the answer, it is not there, you mark it, you move on. Second guessing yourself too much is not going to help. In case they have put in the answer somewhere in a corner, and if it is a trap, etc., it's anyway going to be a really hard question. It is going to be a trap for everyone. Don't worry too much about it. Second guessing yourself too much is again going to take away all your time. Yeah, you're going to face a lot more timing issues in that case, and you might even end up missing easy or medium questions in that case. So don't second guess yourself. Yeah, once you have the answer, mark it confidently, move on. Yeah, just do your best. As I said, it's all percentile based. Relative performance has to be good. It's not necessary for you to do well on every question that you have to hit it. It's okay. Even if you miss some, you can still get a very, very high percentile. Yeah.
Yep, we are running towards end of the session. Thanks for your time, Karishma. It was super helpful, super engaging, super interesting. And thanks everyone for joining, at least making this session interactive, putting all your questions. And I hope it was as helpful for you as it was for us. So thank you all. See you again.
Thank you so much, Harsh. It has been a pleasure to be here, and I hope I could add some value to all the learners.
Yep, definitely.
Yeah. All right.
Yep.
Yep. Bye. Best wishes to everybody.